Good morning, everyone, and welcome everyone. So today is the second day and first session of the session of conference 2022, and this is session 5. The theme of this session is educating society and the nation. Professor Razuddin Akeem will chair the session. The first speaker will be Hina Goswami. Her title is Letters from Lucknow, Representation of Teacher-Student Relations and Pursuit of Knowledge in Mirza Qatil's Roker.
Is that Qatil? Not Qatil जिसका Qatil जो करता है
आपके वाला
Qatil.
So my paper is titled Letters from Lucknow, Representation of Teacher-Student Relations and Pursuit of Knowledge in Mirza Qatil's Rakat. The advent of Mughals to Hindustan provided great impetus to public education in India, while Mughal emperors were all literate men and attracted eminent scholars to their court as well. While there existed no specialized department for the purpose of dissemination of knowledge, but emperors and nobility took great personal interest in spread of education. The basic organization of education in Mughal India was such that while mankabats provided elementary education, independent seminaries or madrasas attached to mosque and khanqahs provided a higher level of education. Alongside the ancient education system of pathshalas also continued, and Hindu center of learning such as Banaras and Nadia also flourished. But under the benevolent care of patrons such as Emperor Akbar, madrasas and mankabat provided education to all without regard for religion and functioned to serve the cause of Hindu-Muslim unity. Rich families also appointed private tutors to train their children. There were also towns such as Gopamau and Khairabad in Awadh, Jaunpur in Agra, which attained great repute as important seats of learning and attracted students from all over India and were associated with renowned specialists. However, in the late 18th century, education received certain setback as scholars lamented that scholarly networks have suffered decline. While earlier students from Bengal writes one scholar, while earlier students from Bengal used to come to Lucknow for gaining education, and through them the madrasas also received some for its upkeep. Previously on the bank of Gomti, Mughal government had made arrangements for monthly stipends of around 700 students to live and be educated. Military headmen also used to provide 1 or 2 villages to scholars for their upkeep, and they in turn used to provide for their students' need. No longer were there such noblemen or such scholars. Students are now anxious and lost for their daily requirements. Those who know Persian find jobs in Hindu household and teach their kids, and while others who know Arabic are lucky if they happen to find a Muslim interested in gaining knowledge. Students taught kids of barber, masseuse and washermen so that they may at least get their hair cut, and most students now wash their own clothes. It was also the period during which institutions patterned on European colleges came to be established by the English, and much controversy raged among the Orientalists and Angelicists regarding the appropriate form of education in India. However, Awadh wasn't at the epicenter of such debates, and here traditional form of dissemination of knowledge continued. In this study, we move away from institution-based learning to look at interpersonal relations of master pupils in the early years of the 19th century, when only vestiges of the glorious Persianate era remained. For this purpose, we look at a set of letters written by a master, Mirza Qatil, to his students, Khwaja Imami. I will first begin with a brief introduction of both Mirza Qatil and Khwaja Imami, so that we have the right context to study their relation. Diwani Singh, as Qatil was named at the time of his birth, belonged to the Bhandari Khatri lineage and was born in a distinguished family of scribes. His family was rich and valued education enough to employ a private Iranian tutor, Mirza Muhammad Baqir Shahid Kirmani, an immigrant from Nishapur, for providing Qatil the education he needed to further his family's scribal lineage. It was under the influence of his tutor, a 12 Imami Shia, that Qatil himself converted to Shi'ism. Such devotion to the teacher was not unique to Qatil, but was rather typical of the Persian literary tradition. It is exemplified also in the case of Uday Bhan, brother of the much celebrated Munshi Chandrabhan Brahman, who turned to alcoholism after the death of his teacher Aqil Khan. As his teacher was Shaheed, the martyr, Mirza Muhammad Hussain became Qatil, the slave, a literary trope typical of the tradition. This important tradition of India's pre-modern society also comes alive in Qatil's letter. Khwaja Imami was a native of Lucknow and was son of a treasury in charge, Mir Yusuf Ali Khan. His grandfather is referred to as Qazi Saab, indicating that he may have served in some judicial capacity, and the family had a lineage of professional literate men. Rukat-e-Qatil was compiled by Khwaja Imami in Hijri 1232, that is AD 1870, under the title Madaun Fawayat, meaning mine of benefits. Aware of his teacher's stature, Khwaja Imami decided to compile the letters that Qatil had returned to him during his long tenure as his teacher, and which Imami says he had preserved as they were Quranic verses. The purpose of compilation was for the benefit of students of Persian language, as it dealt with vocabulary, grammar, and also intended to teach the student in the mannerism of the court and preserve the orders of nobles and other strange affairs. While Qatil hadn't taken care of Imami's education since childhood, but at the time the letters were written, Khwaja Imami was still young and only beginning his career, looking for posts such as that of Tehsildar in the administration or that of a Peshkar in Awadh officials' establishment. The letters hint at an anxiety on both Imami's and Qatil's part for the young man to lend a job suitable to his family's prestige. However, despite that Qatil was travelling and Khwaja Imami was away looking for a job, the training for prose and poetic compositions continued, not just in Persian but in Arabic and Turkish as well. Each word or proverb used was scrutinized and discussed in letters. Nothing was skipped over. News of upcoming poetic gatherings was also passed and new composition shared and preserved. Qatil didn't just train Khwaja Imami in literary arts but also other members of Khwaja's family as well, including his uncle and father. Qatil was intimately known to the Imami household and regularly discussed health of relatives and their progress in education as well. Letters from Imami's father and Qatil were sent together in the same envelope, indicating that Qatil was a regular visitor to the Imami household. Qatil then becomes more than just a tutor. He becomes the cornerstone of the Imami household, who had much interest in the welfare and prosperity of the household. Qatil repeatedly instructed Imami on what expectations he should set and how he should conduct himself in front of superiors, who was the well-wisher of their household and would help in choice of his employment. Qatil was a guide and a moral preceptor as well. These letters shed much light on the aspects of tutoring in a time when educational institutions and scholars had received certain setbacks. Despite Qatil himself travelling, he translated letters for Imami and made corrections of his drafts. While many poets and scholars of the period took pride in Sabke Hindi, that is Persian and its usage as it evolved in India, Qatil insisted that the Persian be written in the manner similar to those of native speakers. There was further insistence that whenever a new style of expression is used, well-established authority must be referred to establish its correctness, much in manner of today's research scholars. Qatil also repeatedly refers to two books, Sarai Kamus for Arabic grammar and Burhan-e-Kate for Persian. On the art of writing letters itself, Qatil advises Imami to write ornate and colorfully. Intelligence and thought should be collected and make a plain paper envy of China's colorful craft. The swimmers of the stream of this art should go from one end to another. They should also be surprised. The purpose of education is also spelled out by Qatil when he says that this is not merely for the sake of wealth but for self-improvement. He writes to Imami, "The world believes that to gain knowledge and expertise is for wealth's sake, but knowledgeable men think that that's not true, because they believe that it is for the sake of achieving perfection and to improvise self. This view marks a different approach taken by Katil from our modern understanding of how education had become a mean of social mobility in early modern India. But nevertheless, employment remained a primary concern. In this regard, Katil also hoped to utilize his own network from Calcutta to London for the benefit of his pupil. Even then, the relation between Katil and Imami was not simply that of a superior training and instructing a younger pupil. The latter exhibit a bond of camaraderie between the master and pupil, reminiscent of Guy de Maupassant's French short stories of more than half a decade later. Katil was eager to wait upon his student and attended Tawayaf's gathering together. Katil also advised his pupil, Khwaja Imami, on matters of marriage. He writes, "Apparently marriage is a good thing, but it is to willingly put oneself in trouble. When your heart does not want it, it is futile for me to insist. There is a popular phrase that what you don't like for yourself, you mustn't choose for others as well. In reality, to tie the sera on one's head and to humiliate oneself is not amazing." While in manner of Chandrabhan, Katil does not theorize on what constitutes a good royal official, but he doles out much practical advice. On various occasions, he advised Imami in ways he should conduct himself with his superiors or other notables. Emphasizing the virtues of humility and encouraging Imami to be courteous to his superior, he writes, "My lucky charm, know that a Tawayaf sits close to the king and the minister stands, but what is truly the importance of her charms as compared to the minister?" Katil also advises Imami to remain patient in matters of employment and writes, "On the first day, to express the desire for promotion is like a child's play, that children of elite men sit at the bank of dough, consider themselves the king and fix high salaries for the servant that is equal to the income of many rich men." In another letter he writes, "These worldly affairs do not depend upon our wishes and happen accidentally. Only God knows what will happen. So what is the point of worrying about it? Wise men should not do anything so that they be blamed and cause unhappiness. Whatever happens by itself cannot be blamed upon the men." Katil also encourages Imami to keep in touch with other high-placed notables around him. He repeatedly mentions Aga Sahib, a pupil and an official of some note, sends his greetings and urges Imami to write back to him, praising Aga Sahib and mentioning his title. Katil urges Imami to write to Nahar Singh, another pupil of him, and ask about his well-being as he had fallen on bad days. At another place, when Imami seems to be taking up a new job, Katil advises him to meet Mirza Abul Hasan Khan, an old acquaintance, and be grateful. Perhaps it was a conscious effort on part of Katil to cultivate a network of familiarity and personal relations amongst his students and notables, who would also play an important role in preserving his own legacy, as well as form a network for the purpose of mutual benefit, and Katil seems to have succeeded in his effort. Imami must also have been a scholar. Imami also reached the status of a scholar of some repute, for he seems to have cultivated his own networks of pupils, as well as authored a book titled Qissa. Some inference that can be drawn from these letters are that the role of educator remained important in the pupil's life till late. It also did not remain limited to matters of instruction, but the educator was also a friend, philosopher and guide. Also, the role of educator did not relate to the person of pupil only, but an elite household extended to the other members of the household, and their interests seem to have tied together. The interests of various pupils of the same master were tied together as well, and there was much emphasis put in forming networks of such students. Such master-pupil relations were highly sophisticated and formed the cornerstone of scholarly networks in Hindustan. Thank you, Dr.